So today's video is a Q&A. So on Instagram I posted if anyone had any questions, and I got like a page of questions over here. Bailey, you lie down. Good boy. Okay, that's what he thinks of this video. So I have just written them down. I have no idea if I should have put them into an actual order, but we'll see. So question number one is, did you always want to be a writer? And I would say sort of. I think with things like this, it's almost like built into your DNA. So I always loved stories. I read avidly as a child and then a teen, and then it was actually for some English coursework. So I would have been in like year 10, so I would have been about 14, 15, yeah, 15. And we had to write like something creative. So I did sort of like the first chapter of this story that I had in my head. And I got some really good feedback from like my teachers and stuff, and it was that story that I then went on to write like while I was at uni and stuff like that. And that was the first book I ever published. But long story short, that book is now no longer available for purchase because it needs a lot of work, and it was a learning process. Like, that was the first book, so I didn't get any like beta reading feedback. I didn't get it edited, nothing. So that I do want to go through it again and sort of republish it, because it is like the first sort of book I ever wrote to publish. But anyway, so we're going off a little bit, but in essence, I think, yes, I always liked creating stories, but I didn't know, it wasn't something that I realised was like a part of my intrinsic makeup until much later on, when the thought of not being able to write sort of filled me with fear, as it were. So yeah, I think you could always say that I did want to be a writer. And then the next question was also related to that. It's like, when did you start writing books to publish? So I think I said that. So that first book that I published was just almost like, right, no, let's do this. I published it, didn't get the second one done till like 3 years later, after I'd had my son. But it was after my son was born that it was, I think I've touched on this before, it was that sort of feeling of, I need to follow this, I need to follow my dream. The thought of like not writing was terrible, and the thought of like not doing something that made me so happy and made me feel like me when I had my son as well, and like you want to be like a good role model and things like that. It wasn't until he was born that I then got properly back into writing, and the first series that I wrote after that, the Soulbound series, that was the first series that I wrote in mind to actually write, publish and start this as like, well, it was sort of like a hobby career to begin with, and then it became like a career. So I do attribute a lot of things to my son. If it wasn't for my son, like that was sort of the catalyst, as it were, to be writing. So next question, where do you get your book covers? So I actually use Get Covers now. So they are like sort of like a sister site for, I don't know if this is how you say it, but Mibble Art. So they're like a really big company. They do like affordable covers, but Get Covers is like the budget version of that. And I have just found those prices really reasonable, and the work they do is fantastic. So I cannot remember off the top of my head how much, because I normally go for like the top package, which gives me like the wrap and the ebook and the source files, and then I can have like more elements and images and stuff like that. They are really good at communicating, so you don't communicate with the designer, you communicate through a person, and then they go through the designers and stuff like that. But so far, like, communication has been great, everything else. Just moved because I think the light's better, but I can't show over here because I've got 2 washing lines up with clothes on, and yeah, so partly the office is also part washing area. So covers from Get Covers, and I really like working with them, and I'll probably be working with them for a while. Now I do have, like on my phone, I've got like saved some like dream people that I'd love to work with for covers, but they are way outside of my price range. So for now, going with Get covers, and I am really happy with the covers. So that's not to say that I've sort of had to come down. I am really happy, but I do have some like dream people I'd love to work with one day. So next question, how do you find your editor and any tips on finding one? So this is also linked to the previous question about costs. And I was actually speaking to one of my friends yesterday about editing and the different types of editing that you can have, because there's like developmental, line edits, copy edits, and you've got proofreading, everything else. Now, that all costs a lot of money, and that's not even thinking about like book covers or promo stuff. So what I've had to do is I've had to really think realistically about my budget, in that it's not very large. I am still in the process where everything I make goes straight back into my business, so I'm not making a profit yet, but I don't want to be in a position where I am thousands of pounds or dollars in debt. That is not what I'm aiming for. So a lot of the time when you look at editing, it can cost upwards of like nearly £1,000. You're talking several £100s, if not more, for like the top edits for like copy and line and stuff like that. So one way I have found to help reduce costs is to use beta reading in place of developmental editing. Now, to do that, I usually have a few different rounds of beta reading per se, and that is a mix of paid beta readers and volunteer beta readers and friends and author friends and stuff like that. So there is like, it does go through a long process, and that is how I've been able to reduce my costs quite substantially, is by doing that. And I was speaking to a friend the other day about how that's one area that she could help. I'm not saying that, you know, working with a developmental editor isn't worth it, because I do think they're worth it, and I think, you know, it's something that I would love to do in the future. But right now, that's one way that I can sort of reduce costs a little bit. Now, actually about like the editing in terms of all the grammar and stuff like that, I use Fiverr. I have noticed prices on Fiverr have been going up as well, and you've got to be careful, because sometimes they are just as expensive as people not on Fiverr, so you really do have to be careful. And like, for instance, I saw there was a quote when I was looking at it, and it was gonna cost like £700 or whatever, and I was like, I can't afford that. So I look around, I look for people who sort of like the same sort of books, so they usually say like what genres they like, because there's no point, I don't think there's any point in getting someone to read it who's not into your genre. So I always think there's a bit of confusion between like copy and line edits, and I cannot remember for the life of me what I got on the last one. But she asked if I wanted like proofreading or editing, and I asked for the editing side of things, and she did read like the first chapter as well, because to see if like she'd be a fit for you, or if you needed more editing. And because like my writing has improved, I have needed less input as time goes on, if that makes sense. But this is a new person that I used this time, and I can't remember her name. I can add her below if you know, if you want. But so she's on Fiverr, and I think so my Reign of Blood and Shadows is about 74k. And I think I spent about £180, something like that. I will have to double check when I get a moment. But yeah, so I spent about £180 roughly on a 74,000 word novel. But I think she did a really good job. Like when I read through, I think there was only like 2 things that I didn't change. So she was really good at obviously the usual. So the general sort of punctuation errors, and usually for me that's things to do with commas. There was a few tense issues because, side note, this book has been in the past and the present and the past and the present quite a few times. So there were a few tense issues, and tense is not my strong suit at all, okay? So she was good at picking up that, but also she helped when sentences were a bit too mouthy, a bit too long. She helped to switch them about a bit. So she wasn't changing my voice, she wasn't rewriting the whole thing, but she did like highlight areas and like edit them for me, if that makes sense. I thought she was really good. And she took about like a month, and she sent it in like 3 parts for me. So, which actually I didn't want to do, but then in hindsight, I think it worked out really well because I was able to work on one section while she was still working on the other. So yeah, I would say you have to go with what budget you have, and in the future I'd love to go with and you know, other editors, and I've used a few on Fiverr now, and you know, I'd love to go for, you know, bigger editors, but this is just the cost that I'm working with right now, and I have to know that I would make that money back before I ever did that, if that makes sense. But also, the more I write, the more my writing improves. The more I read, the more I beta read, because I beta read for others. Just all of that helps to inform my own writing. I've also now got Pro Writing Aid, which is brilliant, and that would be, so I think I have like the premium version. That would be another way to help reduce costs, because sometimes like the amount of work an editor needs to put in can affect how much it costs for your manuscript. So if your manuscript is as clean as you can get it, then they have to do less work, which means there might be less costs involved. So that's something to look and think about. Okay, next question. Who is my favourite author? And then what is my favourite book series? I had a few questions like this. And this is where I go mental, because I don't know. I don't know if I've got a favourite author per se. I am a big fan of Nora Roberts. I read a lot of her books, a lot of her like paranormal series books. And with that, one of my favourite series from her is the Morrigan's Cross series. And it's the 3rd book in that series. That's one of my favourite books. So this is about like, so usually she has quite a set format for her books, so I usually read her trilogies, her paranormal supernatural trilogies. There's usually 3 couples and 1 couple per book. So in this one there was like there were twins. One was a vampire and one was like this sorcerer who then goes forward in time and finds this witch, and then they have to, there's a whole big thing about like an evil vampire trying to like take over, and they go through this portal into a different world, and that's where they meet 3 other characters. So this girl who is like the queen of her kingdom, and her cousin, he's like a shapeshifter, and they go through the portal and end up in the modern day times with this witch and this new sorcerer, and also now this vampire who's now sort of good. And then there's this vampire hunter, and she's a female. So they're the 6 people, probably doing a rubbish job of talking about this book series, but this is one of my favourite book series. Also, Nora Roberts was probably the first writer that I read steamy scenes, sexy scenes in. And I started reading her when I was about 14. So I am a big fan of her. Now, my next favourite series is, let's see, this is the 3rd book in the series, I think. I hate it when they don't tell you on the side. The Summoning, the Awakening. That, I think, might be the 1st book. Yeah, and then here we go. The Summoning. No, this is the 1st one, the Summoning, then the Awakening, and then the Reckoning. And then, have you seen this? Have you seen this? So I got the 1st book when I was in America, and oh gosh, how old was I? In my teens. This is a young adult series by Kelly Armstrong, and it's about like this group of children who are in like this group home. I think she's like, Chloe is like 15. And this group home is not what it seems. There's a lot more supernatural people in this group home, and then they're like running for their lives, blah blah blah. Anyway, brilliant. And there is a romance in this, but it's very much like back burner. It's more plot than romance, but the romance feeds through. And the reason why I like this is because even though there's no spice, nothing like that, it's young adult, it just is, it's a romance that's done really well, and I love it, and it's a comfort read. I read this again earlier on this year. I would totally recommend this book series. Like, it's amazing. My friend's daughter is 12, and I've just bought her a couple of books for her birthday coming up. Her birthday's the same as my birthday, and I cannot wait till she's a bit older to read these. I think her mum would be fine with her reading these, but I don't think she'd appreciate them right now, which is why I'm waiting before I make her read those. So I would say they're like two of my like go-to reads. But then recently, I would say this is also one of my favourite reads. The reason why I like this, right, is because A, there's dragons. I love dragons. Have you seen? I've got dragon books on here. So I've got the Talon series. Oh, it's just a bit too high. The Talon series by Julie Kagawa. Amazing series. Love that. That was the first series where I was reading it, hated a character. You were meant to hate him. And then suddenly I realised that I didn't hate him. And I was like, ooh, cleverly done. And then this... So I love dragons. This has dragons in. Obviously, everyone knows this. But the romance in this, so it like has all my favourite tropes. Now, when I'm reading a book, okay, it's fair to say that I love romance books, okay? Every book I read has to have a romance. I will get bored without a romance or a hint of a romance. But the more romance there is, the better it is. And one thing I hate about books is when I'm really into this romance and I want to see these two characters together, but they just spend the entire plot apart from each other and there's never any interaction. The two characters spend a lot of time together. I thought it would be a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, but you know when she's going through all the training and the school and stuff like that, I thought it'd be really boring. It wasn't. And Xaden was there nearly all the time, and I loved that. We got to see how they interacted and everything else, and just, it was like lots of tropes that I really like all together. And the romance was central and there and obvious, and loved it. So I would say that's pretty good. They're like my top books. What are your favourite tropes? Okay, should we just list them? Love enemies to lovers. Love enemies to lovers. Like, oh my god, that's like the peak. Love enemies to lovers. Love forbidden romances. I love the one bed trope. Like, if people are going to like an inn or like a hotel or like a whatever, and you know, I expect there to be only one room left and only one bed, and we're all here for that. So I like the one bed trope. I love possessive alpha holes, okay? Shouldn't, okay? Red flags in real life are very different to red flags in fiction. I think I'm a little bit colourblind in fiction, and I don't tend to see the red flags in fiction. It's very different. And I love an alpha hole. I love like the possessiveness, which is why I like shifters, like dragon shifters and wolf shifters. They tend to be quite possessive. I like it when the guy is like, touch her and die sort of thing. I was a big fan of, you know, like say Throne of Glass series, and Alien went missing or whatever. Well, she didn't go missing, she got taken, didn't she? And then like Rowan comes on the scene and he's like, where is she? Where's my wife? Yes, like that. I love it when the girl is powerful and outspoken and confident, but I also like it when the guys come to rescue her. Sorry, I know that's not very feminist of me, but I can't help it. Speaking of which, I like villains, okay? Morally grey, villains, everything. The villain series by Marion Blackwood. Amazing. It's villains, like everyone's a villain, and love it. It's just so unapologetically like free. It's brilliant. So I like that. What else do I like? Oh, too many. I won't be able to say them all in one video. Okay, so what are 5 things on your author bucket list? Okay, I think the biggest one would be to make a profit, and I would like to make a big profit because my husband has been supporting us financially for a while now, and I am so lucky and grateful that I'm in this position. But it does mean that we are struggling. We pretty much live paycheck to paycheck. All of our savings have gone, pretty much. And like, we just have like a few more months of my daughter being in nursery, and then we get like the 15 hours from the government. So that will help a lot. That will really help a lot. And then in like less than 2 years' time, she'll be in school. So we're on the path, we're on the road, but then by that point our mortgage is due and the prices right now is like, so whoopsie. But one thing we've always spoken about is going to Florida and doing like the Disney World and Universal and all of those. We watch so many vlogs on it. It's just like one of our dreams. Now we would love to go when the children are like older, but not too old. I think they'd love it as teens, because nowadays, like, I mean, in Disney, you've got Marvel, you've got Star Wars, you've got loads of things. Now, he remembers going when he was like 15 and he wasn't that interested. But I think Disney back then was very different to Disney back now. And Disney back now, I'm getting too excited talking about books. So, but we would like to go when like my daughter is around 9, 10, and then my son is around like 11, 12. So we've got about 7, 8 years, and it was going to cost us a lot of money. When we go, we do not want to be on a budget. I mean, on a budget to a certain extent, but we don't want to be, right, we have $20, we have to find dinner for $20. Like, we don't want to do that. So my ultimate dream, one of my bucket list things, is to earn enough money to take that I can afford to take us to Florida, as like, not paying my husband back, but just like a massive thank you. So that's one of the main things on my bucket list, is to be able to do that. I think I don't know if I've specifically got an author bucket list. Now I do, you'll have seen this. I follow Sarah Cannon's HB9T course for planning, and obviously you do think about your future life. Most of it does revolve around earning enough money to contribute to family finances, so that I can do what I love and earn money while I'm doing it. I would love to, I would say I'd love to be in a bookstore, but it's not like a burning desire of mine. I just think it would be so cool to walk into a bookstore and go, hey, that's my book. I think it's a lot harder over here, and so I know it's hard in America as well, and they had the Barnes and Noble sort of thing, but even that's getting a bit difficult at the moment, and it's not anywhere. It's like a pie in the sky. That'd be really nice, but I'm not working towards it, if that makes sense, because there's just too many things to do before then. But that would be nice, I think. It would just be cool to go in and pick up a book and go, this is my book from a bookstore. Like, that would just be cool. But that's the only reason why, to be honest with you. Would I love my books to be turned into like a Netflix series or a movie? Hell yeah. But having said that, I would like to have a lot of creative control. So I would have to be mega popular to be able to negotiate having a big input in the production. So, like, you know, it's another one like picking up my book from a bookstore. It's like a pie in the sky, but I'm not necessarily aiming for that. It's like a, wow, that would be cool. You want me to come up with 5 things? 5 things. 5 things. Blooming heck. Oh. Can I have a reading bucket list as well? So I would love to have, like, I'd love to have a bigger house, but with it, a cleaner, a cook, and a gardener. I'd love to have a bigger house because I would love to have like an actual library, right? And yes, I do want a rolling bookcase. You know, like a ladder on the bookcase and you roll, like, yeah. Also, a hidden room, like a bookcase, and then you pull down a book, right? And then it swings open and there's like a massive room. Like, yeah. Hell yes. Yes, I want that. Okay, next question. I got a bit too excited then. What's your favourite quote from your new release? Of course I don't have... I'm filming on my phone. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to remember the exact quote, but I did do a reel on this. So I don't know if I can link reels to this. Anyway, and it was the quote. It's from chapter 20. I remember the chapter 20 because when I read Fourth Wing, there's a scene in there that reminded me of my scene and I was like, hell yeah. So it's where my 2 characters, Rayleigh and Rhian, they have found out who, you know, he's found out who she really is, blah, blah, blah. And they're at the finalist ball and they have sort of gone away into a private room and they're exchanging some words with each other, a little bit angry because obviously he's just found out who she really is, so he's a little bit angry. And then she says, I don't know whether to hit or kiss you for saying that. And then he's like, you shouldn't want to kiss me, like, you know, if I win these trials I'll be taking this oath and blah blah blah. And then basically I'm gonna have to find a bloody quote, aren't I? 1 minute. Why didn't I think of this? My Kindle's downstairs but the actual book's here. Ugh. Right, so chapter 19. Smashing. Right. Shall I read it out to you? Yeah, why not? Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. So, I don't know whether to hit you or kiss you for saying that, I muttered, my hands fisting into my dress to stop me from doing either. His eyes flashed. Kissing me would get you in trouble, get me in trouble. If I'm successful in the trials, I'll be taking the oath. No relationships, and you're the princess. You're expected to marry someone of importance. Kissing guards isn't a part of that. So we definitely shouldn't kiss. No, we shouldn't. I don't like following the rules. Me neither. We clashed in a frenzy of lips and hands. He pressed his body firmly into me, backing me up against the door. I'll stop right there before it gets a little bit too much for YouTube. But it's that sort of like, we definitely shouldn't kiss. No, we shouldn't. I don't follow rules. Me neither. And then kissing. And then if you remember the scene from Fourth Wing, which is pretty much the same thing, when he's like kissing you would be like a big fancy words, catalysmic. I'm not going to be able to find it, am I? No, but if you've read it, you know what scene I'm on about. So that is probably one of my favourite scenes from Reign of Blood and Shadows. And then, oh, the same person. What's your favourite quote from your from the Soulbound series? Here we go. I would say, I reckon it's book 3. And it's when they've just had to be like soul bonded for him to take the alpha oath. I've got to think about oaths, haven't I? Okie dokie. So she's quite worried that he's had to be forced into this because she's a magic user. She's not a shifter at all. And so she's worried about Blake's wolf not like wanting them to be like soul bonded sort of thing, but she had to do it because of things, in case you haven't read it. So he says like, I don't feel trapped in this oath and this bond with you, Kayla. I feel liberated, free. And then she's like, you do? And he says, yes. Don't ever doubt you and me. Don't ever doubt my feelings. Don't ever doubt the things I do for you. Just don't ever doubt us. Us? There's officially an and us, and then Blake rolls his eyes. Enough talk now. And then it gets a bit steamy, but this is YA, so it doesn't go. It's steamy and like closed doors. But yeah, so when she's basically doubting herself, and I just love that quote when he's saying like, just don't ever doubt us, sort of thing. That's my favourite quote there. And the last question, oh, that was really loud, wasn't it? Gosh, it's gone really dark, hasn't it? You might see some washing in the background. Whoopsie. So my favourite level of steam, I have read everything from YA to spicy, smutty, dark romance shizzle, okay? I love it all. Yes, there are times when I'm craving a bit of spice and a bit of smut, and I would like more smut than plot. But I also like relationships done well, like with that YA series by Kelly Armstrong. This one, it's YA. There's no spice, no nothing. There's like a kiss, and then that's it. Don't forget the main character's like 15. She's only just turned 15 as well. Whereas in my series, I think she's already 17, so she's a little bit older. So my series is upper YA. But this one, no spice, no steam, but the romance is just done so well. So I don't think I have a favourite level of steam. I would say as I get older, I do prefer a little bit of spice. And I do like things a little bit dark at the moment. I would say that more reflects my weird ass brain than anything else. But yeah, I've always said that reading should be like a safe place to like express yourself and live through fantasies and explore darker things. Like, just because I like some of the darker stuff that I read, and I'm not just talking about like spicy smut, I'm talking about like real dark themes as well, doesn't mean that I would accept that or be able to like deal with that in real life, or like I crave that in real life. It's very, very different. But yeah. So I think they're the questions that I've got for now. I'm going to leave it there because I have talked for a long time. I got a little bit too excited talking about some books, as you do. But I am a very energetic reader. I love... no, energetic reader. In my mind, physically, no way. I am lazy as sin. But I love reading, I love books, it's my passion, it's my world. I do not feel like I can survive in the real world without my books, whether that's writing them or reading them. Like, I read a stupid amount. In fact, this month I'm reading less because I'm beta reading more, but I'm still reading. So yeah. That's all for today. Hope you liked it. If anything surprised you, let me know down below. If you've got any other questions, add them in as well, and I can always answer them in the comments. It was nice doing a Q&A with you, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.